This is a very quick example of spreadsheet modeling and what if functions within Excel. So we're going to use the one from our book. It's going to be a pretty common example where a business is faced with a what if kind of decision. Whether or not to make the product themselves or outsource it, like import the goods, right? So in that type of decision, there's the total cost that is associated with making that product in-house. So there are fixed costs that can often be attributed to like the rent of the business itself, keeping the lights on, things that you have to pay no matter what. And then the variable cost are how it varies per unit per output. And this idea of whether or not it might be better financially to outsource that or import all of those goods via a smaller price per unit to sell to your customers versus making everything in-house. So this division, very common. The one I use here, they are talking about this plastic company where they're thinking about, they have some parameters where we have our fixed cost, which they say for this business is $234,000. And they have a variable cost per unit. So a variable cost for each unit that they make in-house is going to cost them $2. And then for outsourcing it and importing the good in, outsourcing, it's actually going to be $3.50. So here, given this world where we don't have any added on tariffs or anything, per unit import is only $3.50. So the question becomes, they're thinking about, okay, what is their demand for this product? If they don't necessarily know their demand, and they might be interested in understand on what's the optimal cutoff, like how much demand do we need to make it worthwhile for us to do this in-house, and how much demand is it worth to just outsource all of this to a different company and import it in? So some ways you can think about it is look through an influence diagram. This might be helpful as a visual representation, especially for your project where you have this idea of like, okay, when we're thinking about differences in cost of manufacturing or outsourcing, this idea is both influenced by the total cost of manufacturing in-house, total cost of manufacturing outsourcing it. And each one of these are influenced by both the fixed cost, the variable cost for the total manufacturing, the cost per unit, and the outsourcing is affected by the quantity required as well as this purchasing cost per unit. So this might be a helpful representation to be able to kind of just understand how things influence one another. Might be a good way to kind of design this or incorporate that into your final project. Okay, so here we have originally just all of this type of information, right? We have 234,000 plus our variable cost. Here, let's say this is our total manufacturing cost, which is going to be equal to our fixed cost plus this guy, our $2, plus how many units. So let's put the how many units right here. Oh, I need to do plus here, sorry. So this is fixed cost plus the variable cost times how many units. And we'll put the units here, quantity. Let's say 10,000. You see that automatically changed to 254,000. Next, what we're going to look at is this outsourcing. And the outsourcing cost is $3.50. So if we want to do total production cost, if we're outsourcing it, that is going to be our total quantity times this $3.50. And we get 35,000 to make 10,000 units per this particular bid price, as well as make versus a buy decision. And to know the difference of like which one you would likely want to use, you could then say, okay, so our total cost, our SQ here, which is just representing the savings made from the amount of quantity produce, that savings is going to be your total manufacturing cost minus the total production cost from outsourcing it. So here in the scenario of 10,000, you save 219,000 by outsourcing this production somewhere else. Quite a bit, right? So now what we're kind of interested in is making this what if scenario. Like, what is the threshold of where this changes? Like when it's a better idea to start making things in-house versus, buying foreign goods and importing them in. So to do this, we're going to look at our what if function. So we're going to bring this over here. Okay. So we're thinking of quantity of goods. So beginning place, it could be 0. The demand for this good could be absolutely nobody has demand. We might be interested in maybe like say 25,000, 50,000, and now that we have our increments in Excel, we can then grab this and bring it down to represent all the way to 300,000, right? So we have now for our first 25,000 units, 500,000 units, 75,000 units, 100, all the way to 300,000 units in quantity, to kind of see where is this threshold of this make or buy decision. Now we also know that the equation that we have, the savings equation that we want to look at, the difference between the two numbers is this savings rate right here. So right here, I've told it this. Look at this particular equation that we have in this Excel box. This Excel box is minusing B11 from B12. And so we want this cell right here, this cell right here to reflect that function that we have, which is just a simple minus equation from one another. Okay, so we have 2019,000 here. Now, to do our what if function, we're going to go to data. See this what if analysis here? And go to data table. And our inputs, you know what? I'm sorry. We need to highlight everything before we do it. So highlight where you're going to put all your information. Go to your data table. Now you have this column input cell. And what we're interested in varying, the thing that we want to know is this quantity, right? Like we're going to be varying this quantity. So over here in these boxes, which one is the quantity? It's this guy. It's 10,000. So we're now going to use that as our column input cell. That's our column, right? This is a column. That's our input cell for that column. And we're going to hit OK. And there we go. And to make it very visually pleasing, let's go over here to conditional formatting. We'll go to color scale, and we'll do blue and red. Oh, I actually don't want it over here. So clear rule. Okay. So here we have it. We make savings in buying, importing the goods, all the way up till the demand reaches about 150,000 worth of good. That's when we see this threshold crossed where things become more cost efficient to do in-house, right? Okay. So now let's do let's move on to the next one. Clear content. Okay. Then the next question might be, that's not the only bid that came in. So they were looking at various different bids to buy from, and there were quite a few different bids for this particular plastic company. $289, $300 or $2.89, $3.13, $3.50, $3.54, $3.59. And now we're interested in, okay, well, let's look at the thresholds of how much we can buy from various companies. Maybe in the background, the reason why you wouldn't just necessarily want to go with the lowest one is because, you know, they have some kind of reputation of, you know, having some defect in some of the imports that you decide to buy if you go really, really cheap. So you're kind of interested in the spread of how this overall impacts your decision. Okay, so let's go back to this guy. We're going to kind of move this over so I can see the values here. And now instead, we're interested, we have our function, which is this guy, right? That's our cost minus, our manufacturing cost minus the outsourcing cost. And the bids essentially are going to be 289, 313. Oh, I want to clear that cell. Just going to keep on being colorful. That's fine. 350, 354, 359. Okay. Oh. Okay. So we have now our equation up here. We have the column of the quantities, right? Again, we have the new row up here is now representing a new number, and that's this guy, right? This guy is varying across, because we have this over here in our little modeling function as our outsourced good is 350, right? Which is essentially this guy. But we have now something down, a column that we're going to try to vary, and the row that we're going to try to vary. See how it's kind of a very similar way to the linear optimization, actually, but kind of a little bit simpler. So if we go over to our data function, we want to highlight everything, right? So we have our equation that we're changing, which is this guy, total manufacturing cost minus total production cost. We have our quantity, and we have our changing price. I'm going to highlight this entire box. We're going to go to a what if data table, and then we're going to put in our varying cells. So for our column, we're going to do this quantity. That's that quantity. Telling the column input cell is this guy. It's going to do all this calculation one by one, all of these numbers that we put in here. And then for row, we're going to say this guy is the varying output. And so now we have this varying across using all these new numbers, and this input cell is varying across this guy. Okay, so ta-da, here we go. I don't want to do this. Let's get back to conditional and clear this conditional one on the top. And we'll put all of these guys into color coding so that we can see it visually. And here we have it. So we have this table now where the savings from the first company now goes all the way till about, I mean, really all the way to 250,000, right? It's if you can get it that cheap, it's you need to demand at least 250 till you make or break that threshold to just make that decision to make that product in-house. And about 200 for 313, 150 for when it's 350 like we saw prior. We also see that kind of stays a little bit between this 350 and 354. Like it doesn't change much. It's just slowly like reduces that number a little bit, but not by much. But 359, we drop about 25,000 units. And so this kind of analysis here can be really helpful if you're not so sure what your demand is. You might have some idea, but you're not necessarily sure exactly how much, but you kind of want to see how various decisions are going to impact the overall quantity and the savings that you might make in this like make or buy decision. Okay, that is the what if statement, a very simple what if statement.